Welcome everyone to another episode of LunarCRUSH Live. We've got a great episode today with some folks. We're going to be chatting Elastos. We've got Donald, Kiran, and Clarence here with us. Just another disclaimer. We don't take payment for our live streams. We bring on fun teams and people that are building cool stuff in the space. So just a reminder of that. We're going to have a fun conversation today. And thanks everyone for the latest subscribes out there. Really appreciate you guys following us. But make sure you subscribe and slam that subscribe button as it's written in 144-inch font in this intro piece that John made. So John, with that, let's tell us about Elastos. What's happening?
Well, let's start by going through some of the data on LunarCRUSH.com for Elastos today. To start, this is a project that's about an $86 million market cap. Over the last 24 hours, $2.78 million in volume, and the circulating supply is 18.95 million out of 23.07 million, so a significant chunk out there already in the market. Price up 17.87% this week, 11.7 of that over the last 24 hours. So some pretty good movement, very exciting time in the markets. I'll just add, how cool is the price of Bitcoin right now? Amazing. So let's talk about some of the social activity going on with Elastos. So this is just this week of data. And so when we look at the last week of data, what we're looking at here is the social volume. And we see that there's been about 1,400 social mentions of Elastos out there. That's up 41.2% this week. And what that really means is like anyone that's tweeting out or on Reddit or YouTube or Medium, we're looking at when someone says Elastos, and where tickers are supported and hashtags are supported. We're looking at that as well. And so, yeah, the activity is going up. Within those posts, we've seen some significant spikes in social engagement. What social engagement is looking at is the depth of those mentions. So if someone does say a tweet that mentions Elastos or the ticker ELA, the activity that's going on beneath that tweet. So the comments, the retweets, things like that. We see there's been a couple spikes, kind of interesting. At the start of an upswing here, there was a spike. Right here, just before an upswing here, there was a spike. So pretty interesting activity there. Social contributors, we see that there's been, this actually averages it out, but we can see that like up to here, at this hour here, there were 73 people mentioning Elastos per hour. So good activity, up 16.7%. What that's doing is it's looking at individuals. So the number of individuals who are posting about Elastos, that's what a contributor is. And then the dominance, that's kind of interesting here. So the social dominance itself is up 79.8%. What dominance is, you could think of this as like market cap dominance, but for social. And that dominance is really looking at the number of, out of the whole pie of all social posts that we collect across crypto, which in some days in the last week here, we've had, I think our record was like 1.6 million posts in a day that we collected. Activity is just going way up. It's pretty cool. But that activity, it looks like Elastos is taking 0.02% of that over the last week, which is actually, whoops, I clicked the wrong button, which is actually quite good. So that's a really great metric. We also see bullish sentiment. So this is the number of bullish posts is up 40% this week. So every tweet that comes in, every Reddit post, everything, we're actually using our machine learning analysis to understand the sentiment, whether it's very bearish or very bullish. So we see that the community is increasingly bullish. And just to point out a few things that we're looking at here with influencers. So we just actually launched a new iteration of our influencers tool. And you know what I want to do? I want to go back even. Let's go back a year on this one. And let's just look at the last year. So we can see that over the last year, these are individuals that are the most influential on Elastos. And those individuals are influential based on really a few factors. And so we look at the engagement that those accounts are getting on all the posts that they're doing. So all the depth of all their posts. We look at the number of posts that account is doing. So how frequently are they posting? And we also look at a relative comparison of how many followers they have versus the other accounts that we're looking at. And these are all individuals tweeting about Elastos, and it's based on time frame. So whereas you may be influential one day, you may not be for a whole year. So when we look at that, we see that Elastos Info is the top influencer, which is great. We see Rong Chen is number 2. Elastos Sash is number 3. Real Crypto Live is number 4. Elastos Trolls number 5. Elastos Orchard number 6. I love it. And then Elastos OS Insights is number 7. And this looks familiar here. Donald Bullers is number 8. And followed by Houston Supernode ELA, and then Crypto Ed NL. So those are our top influencers. And with that, let's bring in our guest, Joe.
Boom, 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 boom. What's up, everyone? How is everyone doing today?
Good.
Pretty good.
Man, Donald, you're the only one on that influencer list, man. I don't know. These other guys got to catch up.
I know. They need to step it up.
Well, cool, guys. I really appreciate all you being here today. We're excited to get into it and talk through the project. But first, I want to go through, each of you guys and just kind of tell us, where you are in the world, what's it like there, and then also what's your role at the project, and kind of maybe you guys can explain a little bit. It looks like Tuum Technologies and Opulus and everything that you guys are working on and how it all comes together. So maybe, Clarence, if we can kind of start with you.
Okay, yeah. I think you got something wrong there. So Opulus is just one of the projects I advised, one of the recent projects.
Okay, gotcha.
So I guess my role is twofold. So one, I've been the vice president of business development for Elastos for the past 2 or 3 years. Recently, more CR regions, which is now the decentralized business arm of Cyberpublic, which is our DAO. So I'm leading that effort now. But I'm still kind of in the background as VP. I handle a lot of the compliance, operations, a lot of the inbound business development leads, and working on connecting us with other projects in the space. So that's sort of my role, is just many, many hats. I, prior to Elastos, was a software engineer. So I have a strong technical background for 6-7 years in Silicon Valley as a software engineer. And then I moved over to basically business development with the Elastos. And so like one of the most recent projects I did kind of bring on board is Opulus. I did make an announcement about that. So I'm an advisor on Opulus, and I work very closely in the music blockchain efforts that we see in the space. So, my interests are pretty broad. I love working on a self-sovereign identity, which is a big thing for me as well. Music, blockchain, really trying to get more fairness and quality back to content creators, which is in the space, which has been really poorly managed by the current systems, right? And then I have some other projects on the side too. So I do a whole bunch of stuff, but mostly in the background, operations and things like that.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And yeah, no, I think in music with artists, I think blockchain, there's a lot that we can solve there. So looking forward to chatting about that. And then Kiran, tell us about yourself. What's a day in the life with you?
Sure. I live down in Virginia, so it's pretty cold out here. But with Elastos, I started as a simple community member, and I was, and this was early 2018 when Elastos was first founded. So I was answering a lot of technical questions because Elastos was a huge project, so it was really difficult for a lot of people to understand all the technical parts, the infrastructure, how it worked, how everything connected. So that's where I worked as a community member. I was just regular person in the community. And then later on, the Elastos foundation team, brought me on board to work. Given my software engineering background, I was brought in to really help with the developer relations. And things of that nature. So over the last few years, I've worked in a number of projects. More recently, I've been involved with our decentralized sort of personal storage called Elastos Hive. But and then currently, even if I and myself and Donnie, like we both work for Elastos Foundation, but we work through Tuum Tech, and I currently am a technical lead there. We're currently we've already built and put out a couple of applications that was supposed to ease the onboarding of new users onto the blockchain platform of specifically Elastos. And I'm currently leading a team of around 4 where we're building products. Well, I guess we'll talk about that later today. But we're building a platform that has to do with decentralized identities and decentralized storage, sort of. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And Donald, tell us.
Yeah.
Where you at in the
So
world?
Joe-
What's day in the life?
Joe and John, thanks for having us.
course.
Appreciate being here. I'm in North Carolina, so I'm down here on the East Coast, and we work with Kiran, Clarence. We've got team members over in Europe, Russia, Canada, all over. And what we did was a little over a year ago, we established, Kiran and I and several others, Tuum Technologies. And like he said, we've been working with Elastos for over 3 years. So since early on, we've been affiliated with Elastos, whether that's helping with development, UI, UX, branding, outreach, growth, all that. And we decided that it was time to form a smaller team internationally to focus on client-side products, user experience, a lot of things that are difficult in this crypto space where, we're trying to bridge between a traditional world and the crypto world. And so we deal with that headache every day. And so what that has created is we put together several products, one being Assist. That's where we take some of the transactions that are required to publish to the blockchain. If a user just simply wants to use an application and they need to get the Ella token and they have to do the publishing to the blockchain, we could do that for you. So we could plug that into applications. Users don't have to worry about it. We cover the costs. Another application's Vouch. The KYC piece, dealing with decentralized identity, we do a lot of our work in digital identity, and you need to have that verified credential. So we built a little product for that. And then one we'll talk about later, it's we're starting to move more into decentralized social. So we have a platform that's kind of like a social 2.0 LinkedIn, where you take your digital identity, your personal data storage, you can pull in the carrier peer-to-peer network, all that kind of stuff. So really, the most basic way to put it is at Tuum, we try and focus on the user experience. We're trying to get some traditional users on our applications, getting into this Web3 that we're building with Elastos, and make it look nice and usable for users.
Awesome. Thank you. No, this is great. And
Mhm.
so I was looking online, and we were doing a little bit of research, and I saw someone said that Elastos is the aircraft carrier of blockchains. Kiran, maybe you can tell us why someone would say that.
I think they're referring to, so Elastos, let's briefly go over what Elastos actually is. For those of you who don't know about Elastos, it's not just a blockchain platform. It's an entire infrastructure where blockchain is a piece of the infrastructure, but it's not the whole infrastructure that Elastos has built over the last few years. We have, in addition to blockchain, we have what's called an Elastos carrier. That's our peer-to-peer decentralized network. And I think that's what people are referring to when they talk about the aircraft carrier. I'll come back to this later, but basically the third component is Elastos Hive, which is our decentralized sort of personal storage, where applications could utilize it. So all the user data, all the application data could be stored and owned by the users themselves instead of having to store on a centralized server like how Facebook and LinkedIn, Google do it. Sort of a different approach to how websites and applications work traditionally. So coming back to the aircraft of the internet of the blockchain, I guess that's sort of referring to Elastos carrier, because Elastos carrier, it's based on TOX protocol. So what that means is it still utilizes the traditional internet. It is built on top of the internet, but it is it is peer-to-peer, end-to-end encrypted. And so the kind of applications you can build with it are pretty powerful. As a simple example, if you were to think of something like a Facebook Messenger, how that works, right? When I want to send you a message, I send you a message, but it doesn't immediately go to you. It goes to the Facebook server, and then the Facebook server then routes that message over to you. And when you send a message to me, the same thing happens over and over again. So there's that intermediary in the middle where Facebook could take all your data and do anything with your data, right? That's one of the biggest problems currently that the internet is facing. So what Elastos Carrier does is it removes that intermediary altogether. So let's say I could and there is actually an application already, lots of applications. I could build an application like Facebook Messenger using Elastos Carrier. And that's going to allow me to do is, as an application developer, I don't have to worry about all the intermediary servers or any of the infrastructure needed to set up. Rather, I could utilize Elastos Carrier. So what happens is, when I want to send you a message, right, on a messenger app built using Carrier, instead of going through some company's centralized server, it directly routes the Carrier network routes the traffic, sends the message encrypted to you, and the same thing happens to me, right? Whenever you want to send me a message. So in that way, we're getting rid of this intermediary, and that goes for not just how Carrier works, but also, obviously, we know that's how blockchain works because it removes the intermediary for payments. But we're doing the same thing on the message layer too with Carrier, and then we're trying to do the same thing on the storage layer too with Elastos Hive. So that's where the aircraft carrier comes into play with Elastos.
Oh, great. And then, Clarence, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, this is a map of all the carrier nodes in the world. So you can see there's over 200,000 carrier nodes spread out over the world. So like KP was talking about, if you send a message and it can get relayed through these proxies and get reached their destination, and it's all end-to-end encrypted, right? So your data is secure as it's being transmitted, but it also can go around sort of firewalls and things like that if there's not a direct connection, and et cetera.
Very, very cool.
So I have a question for Kiran around you're commenting about Facebook quite a bit, and obviously we're the product, right? It's free. They're monetizing our efforts, even if they may not directly be monetizing you or I. They're modeling our behavior and then monetizing it. And if you were a business with a big idea wanting to build on Elastos, how would they monetize it? Because we look at Facebook as they're monetizing it through selling ads. And if that control of user data is eliminated by a company, by one entity, how would they monetize that effort built on Elastos?
So the idea of monetization, from like if any business wanted to build on top of Elastos, we're not trying to get rid of that. Rather, we're trying, instead of the company deciding everything for you, we're saying, okay, you can build a similar business model on top of Elastos, but rather than the company or business that's building that application, we'll let the users have control of their data, right? So a lot of interesting applications could be built on top of Elastos, where if let's say a third-party company wanted to gather some user data, let's say they're really interested in the age group of age group people are using on a particular application, then a third party could basically decide to plug in and using DIDs, because these DIDs, decentralized identities, again, are controlled by the user themselves. And if they have some verified credentials, let's say, okay, let's say my ID is verified, but no one needs to know what my name is or where I live if they just are collecting my age, right? Like the age group that's using the application. So, those sort of data, like the age group, that's a simple example. But a third-party application could plug in and decide to gather that data, and then what's going to happen is the user would first have to approve that data being outsourced, right? So in a way, a lot of the new kind of business models that haven't existed so far are possible. For instance, you could build a system where third-party applications are gathering user data, and then the user gets paid for certain percentage of all the profits being made, or something like that. So a lot of that is not built at the infrastructure layer, but it can be built on top of the infrastructure. So I think the traditional way of incentivizing, traditional way of setting up a business model, people will have to kind of scratch that and then try to think of it as a new way, as how they can monetize user data by where the user has control of their data, right? So it's a whole new way of thinking because it's a whole new infrastructure. but the kind of possibilities are pretty much endless, right, at that point.
Love it. It's great. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. Let's rethink the world. I love it.
And so, I've got an idea, and I want to use Elastos, and are you guys, and like Donald, is that part of what your group is doing over there? Helping out with projects that are coming on board that have ideas, helping teach them, train them, and kind of kickstarting their businesses.
Yeah. Let me jump back to John's question real quick before I go into that one. So it seems like you're maybe reading my Twitter feed. That's what I talk about for a better part of 3.
I haven't looked.
Well, have a look.
I can verify that John talks about that all the time on his own. So.
All right, go to Donald Bullers, follow me on Twitter. That's what I talk about all the time. So yeah, Web3 monetization data, that's where we're going. And one side of that, you could talk about how these platforms going to figure out ways to monetize data. And there are going to be ways, we're going to move more into the subscription style platforms rather than the way that you're provided free and then they monetize off your advertising and your data now. There's a couple sides of that, though. I participate at the World Economic Forum. So Rong Chen, the founder, and I are both on a task force specific to data policy. So not only are we moving into a place where the platforms are going to have to be creative about how they monetize the data, but also they're going to be really restricted on what they can do, because as we shift more towards the individuals using technology, like was provided by Elastos and many other in this decentralized space, the control is going to go back to the users. We're going to have control of our data, and they're going to have to enact policies where they provide consent to use that data. So not only are the platforms going to have to get creative, but also, World Economic Forum, we're talking about drafting guidance for governments and that large enterprises are going to have to use. And there's going to be a whole shift into the data marketplace and how do you value that data. And we have to look at the data streams, and you have to see where that data is coming from, who's using it, what's the value of that. You can go into governance ways where there may be taxation on data, and that could be harmful to big corporations, but also beneficial to users. What if you're able to just simply get your groceries paid for with your data by using applications? It's not much, but to a lot of people in the world, that's going to be, a huge scenario. And we're going to provide that type of technology. So that's just a quick answer on what you were talking about, John. Joe, for you, yeah, Tuum Technologies, what we're trying to do is take some of this technology that Elastos provides. It's a broad Web3 suite of technologies. And I think there's a misconception out there now where projects are starting to tag themselves as Web3, but it's a lot bigger than just one simple component. It encompasses DeFi, NFTs, decentralized organizations, decentralized storage, self-sovereign identity. All of those components are provided by Elastos. So you need to take into account all those different pieces and then put those into products that users can use. So at Tuum Technologies, we have several products that we are building, like I mentioned earlier, the SIS and the Vouch applications, but also this new one, Profile, that we're launching into alpha next week. And it's similar to a LinkedIn, where users can start to set up their self-sovereign profiles. They can use this interoperable with their DID to other platforms. We're going to provide the API so that other applications can use this technology, easily plug it in. We do focus on the web SDKs now currently. So that carrier peer-to-peer network, that Hive storage piece, that DID piece, which is a huge component to all of this. And we're focused on that. And then also helping developers that are interested talk to us. We invite them into our Slack channel. We can get them going on MVPs. We need to get developers building using this technology. And the more and more that's synced up with these DIDs and identities, it's going to continue to grow the power of the ecosystem that we've already developed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And is it Solidity that people are building in for the smart contracts? I thought I saw something on the site.
Yeah, we're EVM compatible
Gotcha.
as well, so Solidity. But I mean, like Kiran was saying earlier, we have many components. So so the smart contract chain is Solidity, but other components like Carrier and ElastOS, they're in Java or they're in JavaScript. So you need a bit, a set of tools basically.
Yeah, not to hop back into monetization too much, but we do. It's just we could probably talk about it the whole time. We talk about this a lot with with LunarCRUSH, and it's most of our customers are outside of the United States. Sure, about a quarter are here, but you think about the different levels of income across the world compared to different countries, and someone that might be in a country that is has a GDP that's smaller, they might not be able to afford the same sort of SaaS model that someone else could for that data. And the whole point of cryptocurrency and is I feel like democratization of opportunity when it comes to people getting access to everything, and being able to I guess envision the dream and realize the dream that a microtransaction for something very small but giving value to everyone out there is coming to fruition with projects like Elastos. And right now, like something like an Ethereum, it's not possible with fees that are out there to read 1/4 of an article and charge this amount for it. So it's interesting to think about what monetization is going to look like globally in the space. And I think it's a first of its kind moment. Just to throw a thought out there.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I always think that in most of my talks, I like to think of your data is worth a fraction of what you actually spend, right? There's definitely, if you spend $50,000, I would say that someone would pay $5,000 or 10% of what you're spending to influence where you're spending that money. So there is a lot of money there that's being left on the table that we're not getting, that should be shared. I mean, the whole theme is about data monetization too, is not that we want to get rid of monetization of data, it's that we have to share it properly or make it fair, right?
I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. So talking about data, you've heard the comparison of data is now more valuable than oil. But actually, I try and get people together on my Clubhouse group to talk about data and own your own data. And last week I had Brittany Kaiser on, and she's with the Cambridge Analytica that went on and the Great Hack and all that. And she brought up a good point. She was saying that the data is more valuable than a currency itself, because if you can have these applications that are using your data now, and the money is one thing, but if you strip the user data out of this, what do they have left? It's huge. So being able to use that and monetize it and provide it back to the individuals, it's just endless, the capabilities of where we're going to go with this. And decentralization brings that, and it's pretty amazing.
I think that the consumer out there drastically is in the dark on this topic. It's interesting. Like, we used to work for a very large agency that was actually the largest advertiser in the Super Bowl, to put that into perspective, spending huge money. And I remember having meetings. I'll call them out, Adobe. I'll call Adobe out on this one, because they have a humongous data management platform that they license out to giant brands, charge millions of dollars a year, and then you're paying third parties within that data management platform that are just farming data from all over the place. And I remember having discussions and meetings asking, how did we get that data? How did you get that? How do you know that? And I mean, down to really, I mean, it's PII. At some point, you start to be able to model the data that you're getting into individuals and know exactly who they are. It's scary. And this is the current state. This is actually happening, where all these brands have your data and you don't even know it. And I find it's terrifying. You're tracked constantly, and it models devices. Your car is being tracked now. I've seen some of that. And it's, in other words, you can track your phone to your car, to your TV at home, to your computer at home, all of that stuff, and they all know it's you, whether it's an ID or your name. So this is a fascinating topic, and it's definitely something that needs to be solved.
Yeah, and it is definitely a difficult problem to solve. Being able to, I mean, we keep saying we're going to give back control of users' data back to them, but what does that actually mean, right? And the only way I think it can be done is if you don't have any companies storing your data for you, but rather, what if you could, let's say, run some sort of device or server like a Raspberry Pi in your own house, right? And then using something like Elastos Carrier, which is end-to-end encrypted, you could, and then utilizing the decentralized identity, and coming back to Hive, which is the storage layer of Elastos. I think I know that a lot of other projects are trying to do something similar, but until you can get rid of that intermediary, I don't think anything will actually change. You could say that, hey, like we're using decentralized identities, we're using blockchain and everything, but as long as something is centralized in some party and in the intermediate layer, that data will always be controlled by someone, because it's like whoever is storing your data has control over you. So I think a lot of that also goes back to the idea that how can you make it so easy that users can actually choose to store their own data for themselves, right? How can we make it so easy that anyone, no matter how technical savvy, can do it? Or at the very least, even if they can't run their own server to store all this data or whatever, at least we will give them the choice. As long as you give them the choice, you could, like they could know someone who is technical savvy, and they could run that server for you somewhere, and then you could connect to that device, where after that point on, like all your data in all of your applications related to all your identities will be stored in a device that's controlled by you. So like as soon as you shut down that device, right, all your data is erased from the internet. Like if that's what you want to do, that's your data. So you should be able to do that. And I think that's one of the few things that we're trying to do with Profile, because we sort of like to think of it as decentralized LinkedIn. And Tuum Tech is not going to be storing any data, any user data at all. And right off the bat, we're actually introducing a way for users, if they wanted to, they could easily set up their own Hive node, Elastos Hive node in their, Raspberry Pi, or in the future, hopefully, they can just use a smart device like smart refrigerator or something that they can use, where like after that, like all the data that they put on Profile, it's stored in the device of their own choosing. And if someone else wanted to look at their profile, look at their data, it would basically, they would need permission from that user first. And all of that permission, the authentication layer, is controlled by the decentralized identity, which deals with the blockchain bit. So like by combining all these different components, I think only then can you have something like, own your own data, because until we can decentralize, until we can remove all these intermediaries, I think that problem will always be there, where, companies, they may come in the middle and try to do whatever they can with their data. So I think that's the most important thing here.
Yeah, we got, man, so many questions rolling in, and I know you guys are going to do a little bit of giveaway, and so it's like normally we don't start this for like another like 20 minutes, but I feel like there's some pretty good ones in here. A lot of people are trying to kind of understand differentiation, I think, a little bit, and I think maybe something you guys can speak to, is how does Elastos work with Bitcoin? Because I think this is a pretty important part of what you guys are doing. And, I know there's a couple people out there that are exploring this kind of avenue. So maybe whoever wants to tackle that one can just kind of explain to everyone, how does it work with Bitcoin and what's the value there?
Clarence, you want to take that, or I can take it too?
No, I was going to take it. I was actually going to pull up, look for my video. So I actually did a video on merge mining that I have on YouTube. That I was going to maybe throw it up. But yeah, so
give us the live version.
Yeah, give it a live version. I do have it. I'll send the link later. But it's kind of complicated. But it's called merge mining. We merge mine with Bitcoin, and we have over 50% of Bitcoin's hash rate. I can actually share and pull up the screen right now. Actually, see what we have. What's our current hash rate? So
someone beat you to it, 78.9.
51.1 here. It says. So it's over 50%. Sometimes it fluctuates, right? Basically we're just saying that over 50% of Bitcoin miners on average do actually mine Elastos. That comes all the way back to our initial starting point with partnerships with Bitmain and all the big miners out in China. And the great thing about that is that the Bitcoin network and their hash rate secures our hash rate. And merge mining makes that possible. And we're not the only ones that do it. So the pioneers was Namecoin. Namecoin also merge mines Bitcoin. I believe their hash rate's about 90% of Bitcoin. And they're just, never hear about them anymore. But actually, if you look on the blockchain, that's what my video is about. You can actually go to blockchain.com and look at the Coinbase of the actual blocks and see merge mining trails of the logs of the merge mining actually happening. And my video goes into that, but it's really interesting. There's actually like 3 or 4 different blockchains that all merge mine. The one that's a little bit below us is RSK. They also merge mine in Bitcoin. So it's a pretty common technique and accepted technique to leverage Bitcoin's hash rate. So we don't have to expend more electricity to secure our network. So you can say, and you can also say that our network's at least 50% as secure as Bitcoin, which is actually, if you put it in terms of dollars to attack POW chain, it costs more to attack the Elastos blockchain than it does to attack the Ethereum blockchain, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Because if you look at one app, I think it was, just as an idea here. So, okay, actually, Ethereum's moving up. Okay, so now I'll take that back. Ethereum wasn't this high before, but so that the per hour
check right there, folks.
Yeah, the 1 hour attack cost of Bitcoin is 716K. So Ethereum at 400K, for us at Elastos at 50%, then we'd be around the 350K attack cost, right? But still, we are miles beyond anybody else. And if you look at these chains, you realize, yikes, they're actually pretty insecure, right? But the problem is you would never attack these chains, even if it's Dash costs $3,000 to attack, unless you really can pull off a double spend. You have enough money to double spend. And it is take a bit more work than this. This is just basic and a theoretical cost, right? But I'm just saying it's very secure.
Yeah, to add on to that fact, Elastos blockchain, our blockchain component, it's a little different compared to most other blockchain platforms out there because we do merge mine, but we have a main chain, side chain architecture. What that means is, in a way, not exactly, but side chains are sort of like layer 2 solutions, I would say, because the way that it works is our main chain, where the main token ELA, exists. It is merge mined with Bitcoin, so that's where we get the over 50% of the hash rate from. But our consensus is not proof of work, right? Our consensus is a hybrid consensus of merge mining proof of work, that's called auxiliary proof of work, and delegated proof of stake. So we have a hybrid consensus of POW plus DPoS. And where DPoS comes into play is in the verification of blocks. So even if all these merge miners, the Bitcoin miners, are producing blocks and packaging blocks, they're not the ones verifying the blocks. It's the DPoS supernodes that are verifying the blocks. So even if you do somehow get over 50%, to try to attack the Elastos network, which is very, very difficult to do because it has so much hash rate. But let's say you do that, but you still need to take over 2/3 of the DPoS supernodes, which are again controlled by 36 different entities out there all over the world, right? And so because of that, it provides that additional layer of security with not just proof of work, but also delegated proof of stake. And this, in addition to serving as this very, where it takes part in the verification of blocks, these delegated proof of stake nodes also take part in the sidechain consensus, right? So even if our main chain is 2 minutes, like it has 2-minute block time, which is not too fast, not too slow, but when if you wanted to interact with smart contracts, right? Then you would utilize our smart contract sidechain, which is 5 to 15 second block time. So just because the main chain has 2-minute block time doesn't mean that applications that's built using Elastos that deals with smart contracts also have 2-minute block time. Rather, it depends on what sidechain you're exactly using. And if you are using something like Ethereum smart contract sidechain, then you would get a faster block time. And the underlying token, again, even in all the sidechains, are still ELA, just governed and consensus is reached through the DPO supernodes, right? So that's where all these the whole structure is different compared to most other blockchains. And so even if these sidechains have like faster block rate, they are still, all the sidechains that are on Elastos are still indirectly secured by the Bitcoin hash power, because in order to take your ERC20 tokens or ELA on Ethereum sidechain, on our smart contract sidechain, you would first have to go through the main chain. And then we know that the main chain is merge bound with Bitcoin. So in a way, it's indirectly secured through main chains, main chains hash rate. So that's where the difference comes into play when we were to compare Elastos to any other blockchains out there.
Well, yeah, just give me the 36 names real quick. I'll write those down and we'll get it. No, I'm kidding. I did it. Thank you for the explanation. I did a quick calculation the other week of just like what it would take to attack Bitcoin, and the amount of energy that you'd have to exploit just to get the energy, or if you're starting from scratch and building actual energy or power, whether it's nuclear or solar, and then getting the miners and like lead times and like everything else. And it started to get into the trillions, and I just stopped the equation. But it was just basically just not possible. It's just NA at this point. And so for you guys to kind of be securing with that as a part of a larger piece, I think it's genius. And I think you guys are leading the way, and I think a lot of people are going to start following down that path because it's a great way to secure everything.
Right.
I did want to talk a little bit about, where are you guys finding product market fit with maybe some of the projects that are, starting to build, and what gets you guys excited? I know you kind of mentioned like LinkedIn type competitor type things, but where are people, where are people finding it like the best to build, with a network?
Well, I'll jump in here. So we're at a really interesting point. I started talking towards November, December, end of last year, where we were going to move into this 2021 phase where people are going to start to pay more attention to Web3. And, you saw what happened with Robinhood, and GameStop, and deplatforming, and you have Twitter and people coming out saying we need an open, decentralized internet. And it's like, that's what we've been working on for several years. So we're at a really good, exciting point. We've been focusing a lot on what they were talking about, the different mechanisms and having the different core components built, that, let's just say, not the exciting parts of Elastos over the past couple of years. So we're now getting into a point where we can use some of that technology to start to build some products for users to begin to use. And there's several products that we do have that are kind of an early stage that are going to start to be used. We have the Feeds application, which uses the carrier, and that's set up like a decentralized Twitter. And it's still difficult for users because in order to post, you do have to set up your own node, and you have to have that Raspberry Pi component. And we're not at the point yet where you can just download the application and start posting, but you can get the Elastos application and start to view some of these posts. So that's early. We have the peer-to-peer communication piece, like the messenger. So you saw WhatsApp, and let's say, what was it, 100 million plus users that switched over to Signal and other messenger applications, trying to get away from these different policies and to get more of a decentralized encrypted environment. We have one that's called Hyper. So that's at a state where it just open sourced, and we're kind of need to get some more of the stability issues worked out. But that's very close to having that component where we can start to bring users over from large groups like our Telegram group onto Hyper and using some of these applications. And then also we've already talked about Profile, and that's going into alpha next week. So what we're going to do is put up a website, which I can share with you guys then, where we'll start taking users onto our wait list. And then going into March, we'll start rolling out invites weekly to get users to go on that. All of these different components are using the DID, decentralized identity, and they're all interoperable. So as we continue to roll out these different applications and get more and more users signing up to DID, like we built getdids.com, which you can simply go right now and create a DID yourself for Elastos and then start to plug that into our other applications. And we're also, I personally am calling out to any developers or people in the community that are interested in this technology. Reach out to Tuum Technologies on Twitter. Email me, Donald at Tuum Tech. And really, we want to get some more of these MVPs rolled out. A lot of our work's open source. So, we're going to make it easier and easier for more developers in the future to come in, take that technology, and start to expand the ecosystem.
Got a heavy question. In this decentralized world where people are going to be able to post anything anywhere semi-anonymously, how do you deal with things like violence, human trafficking, anything that is illegal?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your stance on that?
I knew that question was coming, and we are going into a decentralized world where that is a question that needs to be asked. And there was an interview on Bloomberg recently with the founder of Clubhouse, and he was saying that there are bad actors out there. That's a reality in this world. We're going to have to live with it, but you can have to build the technology around a way to kind of limit that. In decentralized platforms like these feeds and profiles, you aren't really supposed to be in there for people and take people off. But like what we're doing with Profile is we have that verification piece. So you have to reach these different tiers in the technology to be able to get to that messaging component, to be able to get to that part where you can post publicly certain things. At first, you have to verify who you are and get on the platform. And you may be able to select things like, I am older than 18. I did go to this university. I did work at this place, but you're not going to be able to go on there and post a picture. There are things that you're going to have to prevent in developing the technology when you are going decentralized. So, I don't think there's ever going to be a 100% answer to that. And you're not going to be able to just restrict people completely, but you can be smart about it and you can build technology to kind of combat as best as you can.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to if you're building a completely decentralized application, I mean, that's the whole point of decentralized application, right? You can't really ask anyone to do anything because there's no centralized storage, there's nothing. The users, when it comes to Profile, even the users own their own device, so we can't do anything. So I think in cases like that, there are a certain number of things that we could do, such as instead of trying to prevent all those things, because you cannot prevent those things, rather you can restrict certain actions. So like if you wanted to post some, like Donnie was saying, like some pictures or something, then you could, maybe the prerequisite for doing that is to have your identity verified, right? So at least that way, if they do go on to do some malicious things, then they are still, like, their DID, their identity is verified, KYC verified by this other entity. So this other entity knows who that person is. And so that's just one way. Another way would be to basically, everyone can use it, but maybe searching for those users would not work. There's a lot of restrictions that you can put in place. I think we're still in the early stages because this is sort of, no one has tried to do this before. So I think we're just gonna figure it out as we go along.
No, there is a simple way, guys. It's governance. It's DAOs. That's the reason they exist, right? I disagree. I don't think that just because we're saying it's decentralized that we can't have some sort of governance. That will happen. There will be multiple groups or chat applications, and they'll have different levels of governance. And I know governance on the DAO system doesn't really work sometimes. There are centralized solutions to that. I mean, think about how many people Twitter employs just to moderate all of their channels. That is a lot of money that you can actually, if you were to make a decentralized Twitter platform and you didn't have millions of dollars to throw into moderation, you might just get shut down by the government. You're not ever going to get to a point because you're going to realize you're going to run into reality. And reality is that there are laws that you have to comply with. You saw this recent Earn It Act from the Senate, and they got even more restrictive act coming up after Earn It, which is basically going to shut down end-to-end encryption. And this is very scary. Like, I work in compliance basically, right? So I talk to lawyers all the time, and about there's recently they're going after hosted to unhosted wallet tracking. They want to KYC everybody. It's going to be a pretty tough battle. I think that we're underestimating the government. The SEC is very, very smart. FinCEN's very, very smart. AML is very important. So there will have to be some governance built into systems that do succeed. You cannot have like the Wild Wild West. That's never going to fly. And even in Australia, they're getting rid of encryption. I mean, we're going to have to fight it pretty hard, but we're going to have to come up with a balance, like solutions that actually properly address these issues, and not just say, hey, this is too hard. The decentralization is the way to go. No, you can't just do that. It doesn't work anymore. You get in trouble. You get legally in trouble, right?
That's good. Yeah. And I think this is a fun discussion because, I think, the next election cycle, and not to, digress too much into politics and everything else, but it's, governance is really what the issue is about. And, I think you're going to see the first time someone, running on a platform that, hey, everyone in my jurisdiction has an app and I am just a pass-through entity of information. So it's my job to provide video and, short summaries of what the legal is. And, you guys make the decision, right, on what needs to be done. And everyone, based on their address and a little bit of KYC is part of that decision-making tree. Now there needs to be some sort of KYC around decision-making like that, because then if there's not, you run into the situation like in the UK where they throw out, what should we name this boat? And it's Boaty McBoatface, and number 2 is like Owly McOwlet or something, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like if the internet gets a hold of something, it just twists into this thing. So it's like, how do you kind of protect against some of that? Or do we just, is the future that everyone wants to live in just like a free and open Boaty McBoatface, which maybe could be more fun than it is today? I don't know.
Could be. Well, I want to add one more thing. So we haven't touched on pseudonymous accounts, and that's a lot of us are moving in that direction where you're not going to be presenting yourself as you are in the physical world. So we have anonymous actors now, but pseudonymous accounts are going to be huge, because if you can build out that bridge between your real world self and then your digital self with using a nickname or an avatar where you're not yourself, that's going to be a big part of this decentralized platforms in the future. So we're thinking about that with Profile. Can you have multiple DIDs where you have bridges between them, where one is validated and it kind of backs or gives a score to the other one that may not give you your face and name, but it does verify that you are linked up to that other account. So, that's stuff that we have to think about too when you take into account governance and then how we're going to be presenting ourselves on the internet.
Yeah, I agree. So the authorities are going to have to have a way for you could be pseudo-anonymous or basically anonymous to the platform. But if you cross a line, I mean, we might have to build a way in there to let them find you, because I mean, there are lines that we all agree that we shouldn't cross, right? I'm not going to say those, but
Yeah, 100%. Well, cool. We're coming up. I mean, did you guys? I want to go through some of these questions, but there were so many. I don't know if you guys were looking at the comments as it came through. If there was anything that you kind of wanted to cherry pick off the top, and I know we want to give a little bit of Elastos away. But if there's anything, there's some good ones at the beginning. And if you guys are listening, just retype them into the chat right now. If there's anything, I think we're going to give away, did you guys say 50 Elastos per question? We're going to pick 3. And then John, we're going to give away a t-shirt.
Yeah. We give it a t-shirt, 1 or 2 t-shirts. We'll see if there's 1 or 2 questions answered.
No, throw them out there. I haven't been looking at the comments.
Oh gosh. Let's see here.
It's really interesting. I mean, we could give like Dave Boy here,
What this one?
But,
whoops. Sorry. I was just putting that up.
To the moon. Yes.
Would you like to answer that one?
Yes.
I see one here about onboarding users. I think that's pretty good. Like how will Elastos onboard users? 10:47 a.m. PST.
Yeah, fired up.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'd love to answer that, because I can do some shameless shilling of the other potential partners that I kind of brought on. So Oculus, for example, is trying to use the Elastos DIDs, or actually I hear DIDs now a lot. So Elastos DIDs are basically bringing DIDs to the music industry. So being able to verify musicians and their copyrights and that kind of stuff, right? And so when we're onboarding users, we're tapping into existing users. So we're Ditto Music would be transmitting their 200,000 musicians and artists onto Elasto DIDs. We'll be creating for them probably, and then later on people should have multiple DIDs. So initially, I think the onboarding process is that we create DIDs for them. I mean, Donnie has get DIDs too, for you to create yourself. But it's maybe sometimes easier just to link their current, Google account or something to a DID. Even though we control the DID initially, we can let them link it to a new DID once they get more familiar with how DIDs work and they like the process and say, okay, I don't want you to control my DID anymore. I want my own DID. And you can basically make ways to transfer all your information and link it to your new DID. And that's kind of how I think that we'll probably onboard users. I'm throwing people into this new paradigm where they have to manage their own data is really, really hard, actually. That's kind of the main usability issue that we're running into. We want people to control their own data, but then when you look at your data, there's trillions or petabytes of data. You're like, okay, how the hell do I manage this? I think the best thing that resonated with me is that I was at a conference and the vice president of HTC Vive came up, Vive, or whatever, the VR goggles, and she said, the next unicorn app in this space we'll see is an actual AI or application that actually lets you manage your data. Because think about how much data you're generating on a daily basis. I mean, you're generating gigabytes of data per day. I mean, we say own your own data, but do you know how much data you're actually creating? You're probably very low-balling it because you're creating a lot of data every single day. Your location data, what you look at, what you do, everything's generating data. It's being collected by these big companies, and there's so much data to crunch through. We need an app that says, hey, your data is worth $5. Do you want to give this data away? Yes or no? And it basically crunches all your data down into very simple yes or no questions so that any layperson could understand what my data is worth, what's in my data, and how can I use it. And you need an AI or machine learning to do that because it's just too much data. So that's kind of the onboarding process is maybe get people DIDs and introduce them to this thing, but through an AI layer that kind of masks the complexity of everything.
Very good. Very good. All right. I got another one here. And then how do you want to get a DM from Nick Neal here? And who wants to take that to get the Elastos to him? One of you guys, or we can have him DM us as well. Who's got the wallet?
They can just message. Well, go ahead, Kiran.
I think it's better for you guys to collect their...
Cool. We'll do it. Nick Neal, send us a DM at LunarCRUSH. All right, next one.
On Twitter.
What has changed fundamentally since 2017 with the Elastos market positioning as VM? From Freddie A.
Anyone?
KP?
Maybe Donnie can answer this.
Yeah, so fundamentally, I think that we have continued to put our head down and develop nonstop. So we have a lot of things going for us currently. We have a very strong community. What we did was we came out with the main chain in 2017, and then our community came on early 2018. We caught the height of the last market, and then you've seen what the market's done up until now. So we have a super strong community that stuck around with us, and also Elastos has really focused on development all along, and we're going to continue to focus on development. So what we have going for us now is that we are positioning ourselves with the technology to meet the needs of a call for a Web 3.0 or a call for open decentralized internet. Like we've talked about today, all these components are putting us at the crossroads of a need from the market. And I think that there are some other projects out there that can, compete with some parts of this, but I think that we do provide a breadth of a lot of different needs. So I think that we're in a decent market position several years into this, and the potential is only going to be exponential from here.
Yeah. One other thing to note from like a technical side of things is that, like over the last few years, there were a lot of experimentation, a lot of, going back and forth, just trying to position ourselves, I guess, what's the best platform and so on and so forth. So a lot of the time was spent on developing the SDKs for mobile. And then, when it comes to the blockchain, the wallet, the DIDs, the carrier, the Hive, all of those, currently as it stands right now, because the SDKs for mobile are very mature anyone could go ahead and utilize those. Now, the documentation itself needs to be worked on, which will be the main focus now that everything is done with. But I think also over the last 6 months or so, by moving, there is the mobile development SDKs, but also we're moving more towards the web, the traditional web. So making it so that you could build any sort of website or application utilizing the web SDKs. I think which will be a great thing, because even if there are lots and lots of mobile applications in the world of today, there are still a lot of interesting websites that could be built. And so just having those web SDKs mature and going forward will make it possible to build or to even experiment with a lot of decentralized applications, such as Profile, which is like we call it decentralized LinkedIn. But those sort of things, I think it's just, there's a lot of web developers out there, and it maybe we'll try to make it as easy as possible going forward. But that's what has changed over the last few years.
Awesome. I love when the answer is we're basically following our roadmap, but listening to market environments based on that and pivoting a little bit. So good work. John, you see any fun ones out there? We probably should have given away one of these hoodies that you got, KP. I feel like everyone wants these things.
I see a phishing attack though. Maybe I'll delete that one.
Yeah, it happens. Facebook's the worst, man. I'm telling you what, it's like nothing really on Twitter, like not too many places, but it's like we have like almost no following on Facebook, but there's like 10 fake pages a day. I'm like, must have the user base that works on.
I just realized I was talking with my volume muted. So let's try that. Let's try that again.
Yeah.
I'm going to give Travis Donnelly a LunarCRUSH t-shirt here. This is a pretty straightforward question, but I think it's one that's important to both investors and users. So what is the utility of the Elastos token as related to the whole ecosystem?
I'll answer that a little bit here. So the ELA, the ticker, I guess the currency of the Elastos ecosystem, it's actually used no matter what you're trying to do in any part of the ecosystem. So when it comes to the blockchain piece, you want to transfer some ELA. Okay, you're paying fees in ELA. That's just the basic thing that every other blockchain has. But in addition to that, the thing with the side chains is that because you have to move your ELA from main chain over to these, layer 2 like side chains, it's sort of whenever the more applications get built using DIDs or Ethereum smart contracts on the Elastos ecosystem, they will require ELA to do those transactions on chain. So what ends up happening is you're basically taking a lot of the ELA from the main chain, which is part of the circulating supply, and then you're moving it over to the side chain. So that's kind of that's sort of a utility that a lot of people don't really, well, I guess they seem to ignore. But on top of that, like any application that you build using Elastos infrastructure, like Profile, Assist, any application, we're using DID sidechains. So we're always interacting. We're having to use ELA, right, to pay as fees for getting our transactions published. But in addition to the blockchain piece, there's also another piece when it comes to Hive, which is basically that personalized storage that we've been talking about. So when it comes to Hive, it is entirely possible for any third parties out there to build a business model out of Hive, because what Hive allows you to do is, it allows some central party to provide an efficient Hive node that others could utilize for a certain fee, and all of that is already built in. So the developers, the third parties, don't have to work on any of that. The business model, all of that is built into Hive, and it takes ELA to pay for utilizing the decentralized storage. We call it decentralized, but honestly, it's more like a personalized storage where you could theoretically just have some third party run a node and then a whole bunch of users interact with it. Also, you could decide to run your own node. So there's a lot of things you can do, right? And I think the more applications start getting built, the more utility Elastos will have. So it's not directly correlated with any kind of speculation or anything like that. It more has to do with how many applications are being built, I guess.
Great.
Uh-oh.
Do you have anything to add, Clarence, at all to that, or were you just?
Did he say gas? Because that's the main word that I think he might have missed. Because it is really as a gas fees, right? That's basically the main utility use of the token.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he mentioned that about how, like most projects, we have that gas and the basic currency. But then, yeah, like a simple example is if you want to create a decentralized identity, you have to publish it to the blockchain, use Ella. If you want to verify some of your credentials or different pieces of it, you have to publish it to blockchain, use Ella. So there's a lot of cases, and more applications are built. It extends beyond just the traditional gas fees.
So on that note, we got an interesting question from DaveBoy1810 on YouTube. Can you describe the technology implemented by Elastos that allows for faster throughput of transactional data and increased scalability? This is, I can just tell you from our own social efforts, this is such a hot topic. Thank you, Ethereum. Thank you, gas fees. Thank you, things like Uniswap with $40 fees for trading $3, et cetera. So what is being done for scalability?
Clarence?
Where's KP go? Okay, I'll take this one then. So with the carrier network, a lot of things that we actually want to actually avoid is even using the blockchain. There's a lot of things that don't have to be in a blockchain, right? That's kind of one thing is if you're just doing peer-to-peer communication, you can sign and verify identities on both ends and transfer data with bypassing the blockchain. So that's one thing that we want to do is just network fees should not be transmitted through, you shouldn't use blockchain as a messaging system. So that's one technology aspect that we have, right? But as for the smart contracts themselves, we are built on basic EVM technology. So at the end of the day, it's still going to be, restrained by the similar issues. So, I mean, Elastos is cheap now, but if Elastos was $1,800 as well, we'd have the same issues with price. I mean, we can't get around that. It's gas is gas. And so one thing we have done is we have switched from POW to DPoS, right? So by using DPoS, fundamentally, you're processing less per block, which allows us to get our block speeds down to 5 seconds now. So, Ethereum is 15 seconds. So at 5 seconds, it's easily doable because we're not running a POW hash algorithm at all. We're just processing the actual, just 100% focused on the transactions, right? So by not wasting any compute power on POW, we can just spend it all on smart contract process. So our per block gas limits are higher, so we can process more transactions per block, and our block times are also faster, so you get a bit more responsiveness from the project. But every blockchain has its limits, right? And you shouldn't use blockchain for everything. You're going to reach an upper limit no matter what, and then you have to horizontally scale out, which is similar to ETH 2.0. ETH 2.0 uses sharding, right, on the beacon chain. For Elastos, we use a DAO-controlled sidechain mechanism. So if you need multiple sidechains, you can parallelize that way. But we do a voting process so that if you're a very popular app, like you're the next Twitter on Elastos, you have to apply to our DAO and say, okay, I need 5 sidechains to process my transactions, and then we'll vote on that through our DAO Cyber Public. And if we do agree that you need 5 sidechains, we'll actually give you 5 sidechains. So we scale out with sidechains, but it's very straightforward in that sense.
Sorry, I got cut off there.
Oh, good. I got one other really great one from Liu BCN on YouTube. Today we see that the applications of Elastos still need to ask for permission to get into iOS, for instance. What could be done in the future to avoid this control?
I'll jump in here. So yeah, this is a good question. We were pretty much up there in the front, first movers, trying to build some of these applications having a decentralized dApp store, and that ran us into some issues. So we have this Elastos mobile application where we were releasing it to Android and iOS, and we were allowing users to develop their own decentralized applications and put it inside into a dApp store. And Apple doesn't like that. So they've pushed back, and we're probably not going to see much of that in the future. So we've already made steps to move in different directions along the way. And we first came out with something that's called Elastos Essentials, which is a different version on iOS. But actually, we're going to continue to do more pivots in this space. And we have a lead in Shanghai for Trinity Tech team. When they come back from holiday next week, we're going to deep dive into some different ideas that they have where we can help the native applications to be developed and avoid this roadblock that we've created for ourselves by trying to fit into a marketplace inside of an application. So that's coming up. That's exciting. And then also going more of the web route, like we've said first, with some of these web SDKs that we're going to build out for developers, and then give them access to mobile capabilities. So there's things that are in motion. Like any projects that are going to be going into this decentralized mobile space, they're going to have to run into headaches with Apple and iOS specifically, but Android will probably follow. So we've already been doing this for probably a year now, and we continue to pivot as needed. So we do have a lot of changes coming.
Look no further than Fortnite.
There you go. That was a big one.
Huge, crazy story. And that's, I mean, you could just imagine an entire decentralized web, built into iOS. Good luck. I mean, Apple's got to change even the fee structure, in-app purchases. It's like antiquated.
Yeah, it's got to change. We're not going to go build our own mobile applications, insert OSs, and do our things separate, but things are going to change.
Clarence, you're muted. Unless you're having a sidechain combo.
Sidechain combo. Sorry.
Sidechain combo.
What was your comment?
Sidechain combo. It was actually
okay. Actual sidechain combo.
Yeah,
gotcha. Well, cool guys. This was super fun. Thank you all for being here. I still need, if you guys are listening, I still need Leun BCN. We're gonna give you a T-shirt, so we will see the chat after. Just put your Twitter or Telegram handle, and then DaveBoy1810. Put your Telegram or Twitter handle in there, and we will. There you go. We'll fire that up. But Clarence, KP, Donald, Elastos, thank you guys so much for being here. Appreciate it. We'll chat with you backstage, and thank you everyone for listening. And then John, as always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.